Today on Tune Up Thursday, we're going to be doing the bandsaw. And I actually released a bandsaw video about 10 months ago or so, and I feel like I've learned a lot since then. I've actually learned how to get a lot better performance out of a bandsaw, how to keep them maintained a little bit better. We're going to be using the Alex Snodgrass method of tuning up a bandsaw, which is insane. And I think you'll see at the end of this video that the results speak for themselves. So we're going to start by, like we always do on Tune Up Thursday, giving it a nice cleaning, and we're going to clean the table first and throw some paste wax on there and then remove the table because let me tell you, setting up a bandsaw and cleaning it up is a lot easier with the table removed. And then once you have everything pretty dialed in, you won't have to get as detailed next time you go to use the bandsaw. So obviously you're going to want to unplug your saw and take off your bandsaw blade before you get this process started. And let me show you 2 easy ways to fold up a bandsaw blade. First one, take your foot, take your dominant hand, turn it around, grab your bandsaw blade, twist, and push down. Just like that, nice and easy. The other way, just like a window screen for your car. So you're gonna take your left hand and turn your right hand around, and you're just gonna twist away from you, just like that. And there you go. You should be able to just hang this on the wall without having to tie it up, and it shouldn't open. But just in case, you can put like a twist tie around it or something. Let's get to cleaning. So bandsaws have lots of geared moving parts, which means there are very heavy gears that move like your trunnions down here or your guard that goes up and down. And you want to make sure you clean those off pretty good. And you want to use like mineral spirits or grease remover. I like this lift-off adhesive stuff because it's mellow, like especially on stuff that has rubber. We're going to clean off our tires with this and get all the gears cleaned up. And then we're going to grease it with a GL2 adhesive, which is like the automotive grease. Kind of like the stuff that you would use in Zerks in machines. Is that what they're called? Zerks? Something like that. I don't know. Mark, Zerks? Mark does it now. We're gonna grease it up, and you want like a thick gear oil or something like that for the geared parts, and then we're gonna clean the tires. There isn't really much else you need to grease on a bandsaw. The bearings are all sealed and will never need to be lubricated, and if they do, then you need to be replacing them because that means they have a leak and are no good. So let's get everything cleaned and greased, and then we'll put it back together and we'll talk about setup. The next thing, if you have a bandsaw that's really shaky and vibrates a lot, you want to check your belts. You want to make sure that you don't have more than 3/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch deflection, that your belt's not frayed or doesn't need to be replaced at all. And then another thing that can cause it is unbalanced wheels. So mine are not, mine are perfect, and I'm certainly not gonna make them unbalanced for the sake of fixing them. But I will link, there's a great video below, I forgot the guy's name, but he uses shims and a pencil, and it's a really quick fix and it's really easy. And that's a great thing to check. One thing to think about while you're doing it is because your top wheel is your tension wheel, be careful that this doesn't confuse you when you're checking balance, and that the wobble side to side while it's not under tension doesn't throw you off. So you want to just check them and make sure that it doesn't always kind of go to the same point. But as you can see, mine stops and spins freely without any strange extra motion towards the end. We've cleaned off our tires. Mine are actually, it's going to be time to replace them probably in the next year or two. And I'll probably put on urethane tires, but that is not a performance enhancer. If your rubber is good and has a nice crown to it, there's no need to replace it. Urethane is just a durable material. It doesn't change the performance of your bandsaw at all. So we're going to get the blade on, and we're going to adjust it without the table on, because that's going to make it way easier. One, for me to show you on camera, but 2, it just makes your life easier not having to reach under the table and set all this stuff up. We're gonna be using the Alex Snodgrass method. He is considered the best bandsaw tuner on the planet. He's got a great system that actually differs a little bit from your manuals, and I used to follow the manual, and then I found the Alex Snodgrass method, and my bandsaw cuts just got 100 times better. So I'll link, he's got a very long, not very long, but 35-minute video or so talking about bandsaw stuff that I'll also link below. So let's get our blade on here and we'll talk about adjustments. Okay, the first adjustment is blade tension and blade placement. You want to back off all of your guides and make sure nothing is touching the blade. And then you want the center of the wheel to be right at the tip of the teeth of the blade. And that is what is different than manuals. And so you want to adjust your wheel tracking so that the tip of the teeth moves to the center of the wheel. Or I guess it's the center of the gullet. There we go, we're looking good. And one of the things that you hear people talk about with bandsaws is coplanar. Are the wheels coplanar? That doesn't matter because you need to tilt this wheel separately to get the blade to track in the right place, sort of like the sandpaper on your belt sander. And as long as the blade is on the drive wheel, you don't need to worry about coplanar. It's not gonna help you with performance. But having the teeth in the center of your blade, which is much different than what your manual says, is the way to go. And it really makes a huge difference. I adopted this about a year ago and it is primo. So you want to check and see that your blade, for proper tension, these guides don't really mean anything. They really don't. So I check and make sure that it has about a 1/4 inch of deflection without, me cutting myself or turning my finger white trying to push it. So if you can push it about a 1/4 inch with decent pressure, but not hard pressure, your bandsaw blade is tensioned perfectly. So now we have our blade tracking in the center of the wheel, we have our tension right, it's time to adjust our guides, and there's a very specific order in which this goes. And what's great about this adjustment is once you do it, if I misspoke and said the tip of the teeth should be in the center of the wheel, it's actually the center of the gullet. And if you always do that, then your side guides should never have to be adjusted front to back anymore because they should always be in the right place. So this is kind of one of those things you only have to do one time. So you want the tip of the guide to be right behind the gullet, as close as you can get it without going past. And because bandsaw blades have set, the teeth stick out one way or the other. If you go past that, you're gonna start ruining your bearings because the tooth set is gonna rub on them. So you just want that right there, just behind your gullet. And so you're gonna lock that down, and then you're gonna do it for your bottom guide as well. Okay, next is our thrust bearings, and you want these to be as close as humanly possible without touching to your blade. And the way to make sure that you have it right is you should be able to see just a little bit of light, and then when you rotate your wheel, see the bearings moving right now. So we're gonna pull that back just a little bit. So, and you'll hear people say like, oh, use a folded dollar bill or a feeler gauge, but you just really want to get it really close. And then if you just barely touch it, you should be able to do it without hurting yourself at all. It should rotate. So that's about right. And then we're going to come down here and do our bottom bearing the same. So that looks good right there. We can lock that. And as you can see, neither of them move, but if I push, they both move. So that's the one, these are like the most important ones because you have the center of the gullets on the wheel. This is like a fishtail. So this part is always gonna track straight, but what can get wonky is this, and so you wanna make sure your thrust bearings are just right about there. And those are absolutely perfect. Okay, next is our side guides. And again, I probably am going to upgrade to bearings, but if you don't have them, it doesn't matter. I used to use Cool Blocks, which are pretty good. I use those on my Grizzly 14-inch. But these you want to get pretty close. Not as close as your thrust bearing, but pretty close. This is going to help also with that fishtail. But you don't want them to be so close that if you go to make a turn, it just isn't going to move at all. So you want to get it like maybe twice as far as your thrust bearing. So 2 hairs widths away, and lock those down. And you want to make sure that when you rotate your wheel, they aren't rubbing, but that it's pretty easy to get right up on them. And an easy way to do this is just put them on the blade and leave them loose, and you can just tap it over, tap your blade just a little bit, and that's perfect. And now we're going to do that to our bottom guides as well. There we go. None of my bearings are moving, but if I touch them just a little bit, then they do. So there you go. That's how you set it all up. And the great thing is, the thrust bearings you'll have to change if you change the different size blades, but the lower and top side guides, you want to visually check them that they should just about be right every time you change blades, as long as you put that gullet in the center of the tooth. Other than that, it's all pretty good. So let's get the table on here, and then I'll show you how to level that. One last thing before I put the table on to know is this is your table stop. This is how you adjust the 90-degree stop on your table. So once we do get it level, you're going to want to come back and adjust this knob so that the table rests on it, and you can use this bottom nut to lock it in. I think just about every table saw has them. Also, there's these brushes on mine. Yours may or may not have these. These are good to always keep against the blade and the wheel. They help clean off dust so it doesn't get accumulated. Not all bandsaws have them, but you want to check those, and they have a nut on them for adjusting them so they're touching. So let's get the table on and we'll get it level. So here's the test for your table that it works great. What you're gonna do is you're gonna turn your saw on. You're gonna make a kerf, then you're gonna flip it over, put it behind the blade, and if the blade fits into it, then you know your table is square to the blade. So then you can see here, our blade fits in. It looks like it's a little bit off. You can see that the gap's bigger up there than it is down there. So I'm just gonna adjust it just a very, very little amount. And this is a scrap piece of walnut, which I'm sure you guys all have scrap walnut lying around, right? Sorry for not using a 2x4. So as you can see, that fits in there perfect. Everything's good to go. All right, let's get the fence on here and see how well we did. We got our blade. It's about a, I don't know, 16th, maybe a 32nd from the fence. And we're gonna run a piece of wood through here and cut a piece of really nice thin veneer. So look at that, just under 6/100ths. I bet you William Walker can't make one that thin. That's pretty incredible. And you can see, this is how you know we did good, is it's the same, just about the same everywhere. And this is an old blade. I didn't change this blade. This is a blade I've had on here for about a year. And I mean, you can see like there's barely any blade marks. That method for setting up a bandsaw, man, it'll change your game. I found it about a year ago and I regret that I didn't know it earlier. It just really, the results speak for themselves. You know, one of the things that is hard to address in bandsaws is shaking. I know that maybe some of you have bought used bandsaws and they shake a lot. And to be honest, the way I start is bolt it to the floor or bolt it to something very heavy. Start there. Then you want to look for anything that's unbalanced in your tires or your motor or your belts. But honestly, some of those older bandsaws, I mean, for the time and energy it would take to fix, you might as well just invest in a new one that is not going to shake. Also, if you get one of those 6-inch riser blocks for your 14-inch bandsaw, whether it's a Jet or a Grizzly, that may cause some shaking because you get that extra post and a little bit more flex. But if it's a new bandsaw and you bought the 6-inch riser block new, don't settle for it. Make sure you call the company and send it back and get another one because it could be a defect in what they sent you. So guys, bandsaw. Again, another easy tune-up Thursday. This stuff is easy, so don't neglect your tools because if you don't do this, you're gonna cry more often when you have to replace them or replace parts. And you know, this took 20 minutes of my time while shooting video with Mark making me redo stuff so he could get cool shots of me unscrewing and screwing things. So take the time, do it right. Only other piece of advice I can give you on the bandsaw is if you raise and lower this for woods of different height, then make sure that you check and just visually verify that your bearings are not suddenly out of alignment because some older bandsaws, you know, this may be a little bit bent and it may move it aslant. That's all. Guys, let me know down in the comments what you'd like to see for next Tool Tune-Up Thursday. If you're new here, please subscribe, stay safe in the shop, and have a wonderful day.